Your grocery bill is up, your car insurance is up, your rent is up. And yesterday, nearly 7 million Americans took to the streets with one message: no kings. But here's what nobody's talking about. While millions were protesting what they're calling authoritarianism, the US dollar was sending its own warning signal. And your wallet? It's caught right in the middle. This isn't just about politics anymore. This is about your money, your savings, and whether the most powerful economy on earth is playing a dangerous game. I'm going to show you exactly how Trump's tariffs, executive power, and this protest movement are connected to something much bigger, and why economists are quietly sounding the alarm. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand what's really at stake when protest signs read "No Kings" and the market starts to sweat. Let's start with what happened yesterday. October 18, 2025, over 2,700 events across all 50 states, nearly 7 million people. The largest coordinated protest movement since Trump's second term began. The slogan? No kings. Now you might be thinking, okay, another protest. But here's why this one's different. This isn't just about one policy or one scandal. Protesters are making a very specific economic argument, that power is concentrating in ways that directly threaten their financial survival. Listen to what they're demanding. An end to what they call the billionaire takeover. Stop the cuts to Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. End the government shutdown that's now stretched past 18 days. And here's the big one: stop the global tariffs that they say are causing economic turmoil. This is the fourth major protest wave in 2025 alone. Back in April, up to 5 million people showed up for hands-off protests. Labor Day saw workers over billionaires rallies. Each one growing larger, each one more focused on economics. But why no kings? Because protesters are drawing a direct line between concentrated executive power and their shrinking bank accounts. They were not just saying Trump is acting like a king, they were saying that when one person has unchecked power over trade policy, over government spending, over federal agencies, the economic consequences flow downhill, fast. And here's the uncomfortable truth that both sides of the political aisle need to hear. They might have a point. Not about politics, about economics. Because when we look at the history of concentrated economic power, from monarchies to authoritarian regimes, one pattern emerges clearly: instability, unpredictability, and ultimately, economic pain for ordinary people. So let's follow the money, because that's where this story gets really interesting. Here's what you need to understand about tariffs. When politicians sell them, they say, "We're protecting American jobs. We're making other countries pay." Sounds great, right? But here's what actually happens. And I'm going to make this crystal clear because this affects every single person watching. A tariff is a tax. Not on China, not on Mexico. On you, on American companies that import goods. And they pass that cost straight to consumers. Under Trump's tariff regime, we've seen sweeping duties on everything from steel and aluminum to electronics, automobiles, and even food products. The administration has positioned this as economic nationalism, bringing manufacturing back, punishing unfair trade practices, making America strong. But let's look at the real-world impact. Small businesses that rely on imported materials? Their costs have skyrocketed. Some are closing. Others are laying off workers. The irony? The jobs being protected by tariffs are often outnumbered by jobs lost due to higher business costs. Your electronics? More expensive. That's not inflation, that's tariff taxes being passed to you. Building materials? Up 20 to 30% in some categories. Even food prices are affected when agricultural exports get hit with retaliatory tariffs from other countries. And here's the kicker: trade wars invite retaliation. When Trump slaps tariffs on Chinese goods, China retaliates against American agricultural exports. American farmers, the very people tariffs are supposed to protect, get crushed. We saw this in his first term, and we're seeing it again. The Congressional Budget Office has estimated that aggressive tariff policies could reduce U.S. GDP growth by 0.5 percentage point or more. That might sound small, but we're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars in lost economic activity. Jobs that don't get created, raises that don't happen, investments that companies don't make because they can't predict costs. But here's where it connects to those protests. When one person, whether it's a president, a king, or an emperor, can unilaterally impose tariffs without meaningful congressional oversight, You've eliminated one of the key checks and balances that keeps economic policy stable and predictable. Markets hate uncertainty. Businesses hate uncertainty. And right now, uncertainty is the policy. Now let's talk about something that affects every American. Whether you know it or not, the US dollar. The dollar is the world's reserve currency. That's a fancy way of saying that global trade runs on dollars. Oil, priced in dollars. International debt, issued in dollars. When countries need a safe asset, they buy US Treasury bonds in dollars. This gives America an extraordinary privilege. We can borrow cheaply. We can run larger deficits than other countries. Our economic power is multiplied by the dollar's dominance. But here's what keeps economists up at night. That privilege isn't guaranteed. It's based on trust. Trust that America's economy is stable. Trust that our political system has checks and balances. Trust that we won't make erratic, unpredictable decisions that destabilize global markets. And that trust? It's being tested. When executive power concentrates, when tariffs can be imposed by tweet, when government shutdowns stretch for weeks, when political chaos becomes the norm, international investors start asking questions. Should we keep so much wealth tied to U.S. assets? Are there alternatives? We're already seeing hints of this. Some countries are exploring alternatives to dollar-denominated trade. Digital currencies. Bilateral trade agreements that bypass the dollar entirely. These are small moves now, but they're directional. They show where things could go. And if the dollar loses its reserve currency status? That's an economic earthquake. Borrowing costs would spike. The national debt, already over $34 trillion, would become far more expensive to service. We'd face a choice between massive spending cuts or inflation. Either way, ordinary Americans pay the price. Here's the uncomfortable parallel. Historically, when authoritarian regimes or strongman leaders consolidate economic power, international confidence declines. Markets don't trust systems without checks and balances because those systems can change overnight. Think about it. If you're a foreign investor, what looks more stable? A system where economic policy is debated, analyzed, and voted on by hundreds of elected representatives? Or a system where one person can fundamentally reshape trade policy on a whim? This is what those "no kings" protesters understand intuitively, even if they're not using these exact economic terms. Concentrated power creates economic risk, and that risk has a price tag. So that's the question we need to ask. What happens to economic checks and balances when power concentrates? America's economic success has never been about one brilliant leader. It's been about systems. The Federal Reserve operates independently from politics. Congress controls spending through a legislative process. Courts can strike down unconstitutional economic policies. These aren't bugs, they're features. They create stability, predictability, and trust. But when executive power expands, whether through emergency declarations, executive orders, or simply political dysfunction that makes Congress irrelevant, those checks erode. And markets notice. Bond markets, stock markets, currency markets. They're all pricing in risk right now. Look at the government shutdown that's still ongoing. 18 days and counting. Federal workers furloughed, contractors unpaid, economic activity frozen. This isn't just a political inconvenience, it's a massive economic disruption. GDP takes a hit, consumer confidence drops. And for what? Because executive power and congressional power are locked in a stalemate with no clear resolution mechanism. This is what protesters mean when they talk about chaos. This is what economists mean when they talk about policy uncertainty. And here's what should worry everyone. The longer this pattern continues, the more expensive it gets. Not just in terms of immediate economic costs, but in terms of long-term credibility. Every shutdown makes investors slightly more nervous. Every tariff surprise makes businesses slightly more cautious. Every demonstration of unchecked executive power makes international partners slightly less trusting. These things compound, slowly at first, then all at once. So where does this leave us? 7 million Americans didn't take to the streets yesterday just because they disagree with policies. They there because they feeling real economic pain and they reconnecting that pain to how power works. Whether you agree with their politics or not, the economic question they're raising is legitimate. Does concentrated executive power create economic instability? And the evidence suggests yes, it does. Tariffs that can be imposed unilaterally create business uncertainty. Government shutdowns that happen because of executive congressional standoffs freeze economic activity. And when international observers see political chaos instead of systemic stability, they start pricing in risk. Your dollar is worth less when the system behind it looks shaky. Your job is less secure when businesses can't predict policy. Your savings are at risk when debt becomes more expensive to service. This isn't about left versus right. This is about stable economic systems versus unstable ones. And right now, the warning signs are flashing. The protesters are holding signs that say no kings, but maybe the real message should be no kings, because economic stability requires checks and balances. Your wallet will thank you for paying attention. If this video opened your eyes to the connection between political power and your personal finances, hit that subscribe button. Because this story isn't over and neither is its impact on your money.